The Florida Keys, August 22, 1991. The storm rages on, a violent tempest tearing through the quiet town. Winds howl, lightning slices through the darkness, and rain lashes against rooftops. But as nature unleashes its fury, something even more sinister is unfolding within the walls of a modest home. By morning, a young couple, Michael and Missy MacIvor, and their unborn child, Kyle Patrick, will be gone forever, brutally murdered. Who would commit such a monstrous act, and why on this stormy night? The truth would take years to uncover. Michael and Missy MacIvor were the embodiment of love and hope. High school sweethearts who married young, they had built a life in the paradise of the Florida Keys. Missy, 8 months pregnant, was eagerly awaiting the arrival of their first child. Michael, a hard-working husband, was excited about becoming a father. They were a couple who had everything to look forward to. Friends described them as inseparable, full of life, and deeply in love. This was a love story that should have lasted a lifetime, but life, as they knew it, was about to shatter. On the morning of August 23, 1991, a neighbor, concerned by the lack of activity at the MacIvor home, went to check on them. What he found was unimaginable. Michael and Missy were dead. Both had been strangled, and Michael's neck was broken. Missy, in her 8th month of pregnancy, had been sexually assaulted before her murder. Her unborn son, Kyle Patrick, lived for 30 agonizing minutes in the womb before succumbing to the violence that took his mother's life. The scene was nothing short of a nightmare. The investigation began with a storm of questions, but few answers. Who would target such a loving couple? Was it a random act of violence, or was someone stalking them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Detectives combed through the crime scene, but the storm had washed away potential evidence. Inside the home, they discovered unsettling details. It was clear the intruder had known the layout, had come prepared, and had one goal: to leave no survivors. In the early 1990s, DNA technology was in its infancy. Detectives relied heavily on interviews and circumstantial evidence to piece together what had happened. The lack of immediate suspects frustrated the community. Rumors swirled. Was it someone they knew? Someone with a vendetta? Or was it a random predator who chose their home during the chaos of the storm? Friends and family were left to grieve without answers, haunted by the knowledge that the killer was still out there. Years passed, and the case grew cold. Forensic breakthroughs were on the horizon, but justice for Michael, Missy, and baby Kyle seemed out of reach. Then, in 1996, a burglary arrest in the Florida Keys would change everything. Thomas Overton, a gas station attendant with a history of petty crimes, had been taken into custody. Detectives noticed his demeanor, calculated, cold, and uncooperative. They began to suspect he was capable of far more than burglary. Overton's arrest became the turning point in the MacIvor case. Detectives sought his DNA, but he refused. Desperate to avoid scrutiny, he attempted suicide in his holding cell, slashing his throat. His attempt failed, and, in an ironic twist, the bloody towels used to save his life became the key to obtaining a DNA sample. What happened next would shock even the most seasoned investigators. Overton's DNA was a match to the evidence found at the MacIvor crime scene. After 5 long years, they had their suspect. The trial of Thomas Overton was a chilling journey into the mind of a predator. The prosecution revealed how Overton had targeted Missy MacIvor. She was a regular customer at the gas station where he worked. Overton, a man who thrived on control and violence, had memorized her address from a check she had written. He admitted to scoping out their home on multiple occasions, waiting for the right moment. The storm provided the perfect cover, a night when the world was distracted and help would be delayed. The courtroom heard harrowing testimony, painting a picture of Overton's calculated brutality. Witnesses recounted his obsession with finding the perfect time to rob homes during storms or power outages. Overton's own words, spoken to an acquaintance, sealed his fate. The best time to strike is when no one expects it. The jury listened as prosecutors detailed how he had violated the sanctity of the MacIvor's home, leaving behind a trail of terror and heartbreak. On March 18, 1999, Thomas Overton was convicted of the murders of Michael and Missy MacIvor. He was sentenced to death. But even as justice was served, the pain for the MacIvor family and their friends remained. Overton's conviction brought answers, but it could never bring back the lives so cruelly taken. The story of Michael and Missy MacIvor is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the evil that can lurk in the shadows. It's a tale of love interrupted, of dreams destroyed, and of a community forever changed. Their memory lives on, a testament to the resilience of those who loved them and the tireless efforts of law enforcement to bring their killer to justice. As we remember their story, we are left with a haunting question. How many other predators, like Thomas Overton, are still out there, waiting for the perfect storm? The storm raged through the night, leaving devastation in its wake. But as the sun rose over the Florida Keys, nature's destruction was overshadowed by something far more sinister. In a quiet neighborhood, a tragedy unlike any other was about to come to light. It was a neighbor who first noticed something was wrong. Michael and Missy MacIvor's home, usually alive with joy and laughter, stood eerily still. The storm had knocked out power, but this silence was different. Concerned, the neighbor ventured closer, only to be met with a scene that would haunt them forever. Inside the home, the lifeless bodies of Michael and Missy were discovered. Michael, brutally beaten, his neck broken. Missy, 8 months pregnant, lay motionless. Strangled, assaulted, her unborn child still clinging to life for a fleeting 30 minutes before the darkness claimed him too. 3 lives, extinguished in one horrifying act. For the first responders, it was a sight they would never forget. Hardened officers and seasoned paramedics found themselves grappling with the sheer cruelty of what had unfolded. The young couple, just beginning their journey as parents, now lay lifeless in what was supposed to be their safe haven. Word of the murders spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the close-knit community. Fear gripped the Florida Keys. If a young, promising couple could be targeted so viciously in their own home, who would be next? Doors were locked, windows secured, and neighbors eyed each other with suspicion. The dream of living in paradise had turned into a waking nightmare. For Michael and Missy's families, the loss was unbearable. They were left not only with grief, but with burning questions. Who could have done this, and why? The MacIvors' dreams of parenthood and a future together were stolen in an instant, leaving behind only heartbreak and anger. As weeks turned into months, the investigation seemed to stall. Leads ran cold, and the community's hope for justice began to fade. But for law enforcement, the case was far from over. Behind the scenes, detectives pored over evidence, determined to uncover the truth. Yet, for years, the killer remained a ghost, leaving behind only pain and unanswered questions. By 1991, the tools available to law enforcement were no match for the cunning of the predator they were chasing. With no witnesses and few tangible leads, the MacIvor murders became a puzzle with pieces scattered far and wide. Investigators faced mounting pressure to find answers, but the case refused to yield its secrets. For 5 years, fear lingered like a shadow over the Florida Keys. Who could commit such a heinous act? And were they still lurking among the unsuspecting residents? The community lived in fear, locking their doors and looking over their shoulders, haunted by the unknown. In 1996, a small breakthrough came from an unlikely place, a gas station attendant named Thomas Overton. Overton was no stranger to law enforcement. Known for his unsettling demeanor and a reputation for trouble, he had long been a source of unease in the community. Overton's name had surfaced before, but there had never been enough evidence to link him to the MacIvor murders. That all changed when he was arrested for a burglary. During his time in custody, detectives saw an opportunity to connect the dots. They needed his DNA, but Overton had other plans. Desperate to avoid giving a sample, Overton attempted to take his own life in his jail cell, slashing his throat with a razor blade. But his plan backfired. The bloody towels used to save his life would become the key to cracking the case. Forensic scientists used the blood to extract his DNA, and the results were chilling, a match to the DNA found at the MacIvor crime scene. After years of dead ends, the hunt was over. Overton, the man who had terrorized the Florida Keys, was finally unmasked. He had not only stolen the lives of Michael and Missy, but had left an entire community paralyzed by fear. His capture marked a turning point, not just in the case, but in the use of DNA as a powerful tool for justice. As the details emerged, a horrifying picture began to form. Overton had carefully planned the attack, targeting Missy after seeing her at the gas station where he worked. Using a check she had written, he tracked down her address. On the stormy night of August 22, 1991, he put his twisted plan into action, knowing the chaos of the storm would mask his movements. For investigators and the families of the victims, the breakthrough was bittersweet. They had finally identified the killer, but the wounds left by his crimes ran deep. Overton's arrest brought answers, but no measure of justice could ever bring back what he had stolen. The case of Michael and Missy MacIvor stands as a testament to the resilience of those who seek justice, no matter how long it takes. It's a story of loss, fear, and ultimately, the triumph of science and determination over darkness. But for those who knew and loved the MacIvors, the scars remain, a reminder of a storm that changed their lives forever. In 1999, after years of fear, uncertainty, and unanswered questions, the case of Michael and Missy MacIvor finally made its way to the courtroom. The trial of Thomas Overton captivated not only the Florida Keys, but the entire nation, as horrifying details of the murders were brought to light. The prosecution painted a vivid and chilling picture of a calculated killer. Overton, they revealed, had confessed to a fellow inmate that he deliberately targeted homes during storms, knowing the chaos and noise would mask his actions. Storms, to most, were an inconvenience. To Overton, they were the perfect cover for his unspeakable crimes. Testimony revealed how Overton fixated on Missy after she stopped at the gas station where he worked. He studied her, noting her address from the check she wrote to pay for her purchase. To him, she wasn't a person, but a target. Her pregnancy and vulnerability making her the ideal victim in his twisted mind. In the courtroom, the MacIvor family and friends sat in silent anguish as prosecutors detailed Overton's methodical approach. On the night of the storm, armed with the knowledge of their location, he broke into the MacIvor home. The horror that followed was premeditated and ruthless. Testimony from forensic experts confirmed the brutality. Michael was beaten and strangled, while Missy was assaulted before being murdered in cold blood. Baby Kyle Patrick's short and tragic fight for survival added another layer of heartbreak. Overton's defense team attempted to challenge the evidence, questioning the chain of custody for the DNA samples and claiming his confession was coerced. But the facts were irrefutable. The DNA evidence, extracted from the bloody towel he left behind, placed him unequivocally at the scene of the crime. Combined with his confession to a fellow inmate and his criminal history, the case against him was overwhelming. Throughout the trial, the MacIvor family was a constant presence in the courtroom, their pain palpable with each revelation. For Missy's mother, the hardest blow came when the court ruled that baby Kyle Patrick was not legally considered a victim. His brief life, snuffed out before it had even begun, was seen as collateral damage by the legal system. A decision that left the family reeling. Journalists and lawyers who covered the trial described it as one of the most emotionally charged cases they had ever witnessed. Courtroom sketches captured the intensity of the proceedings, the stoic faces of the jury, the quiet determination of the prosecutors, and the unrepentant demeanor of Overton himself. For many, his lack of remorse was the most chilling aspect of all. In the end, the jury reached a unanimous decision. Overton was found guilty on all counts, his fate sealed by the weight of the evidence and the undeniable truth of his actions. But for those who had lost so much, the verdict was only the beginning of a long journey toward healing. With the guilty verdict handed down, Thomas Overton's sentence was swift and decisive. In 1999, he was sentenced to death, a punishment reserved for the most heinous of crimes. For the MacIvor family, it was a moment of relief, but also a stark reminder of the life they had lost. For Michael and Missy's loved ones, the verdict brought a sense of closure, but the scars left by Overton's actions would never fully heal. Missy's mother, speaking through tears, expressed the bittersweet nature of the outcome. "We have justice," she said, "but it will never bring my daughter and grandson back." Even as Overton was escorted to death row, questions lingered. Could this have been prevented? How could a man so calculated and cold have slipped through the cracks for so long? For the community of the Florida Keys, the trial's conclusion marked the end of one chapter, but left behind a legacy of fear and vigilance. Overton's face became a symbol of evil, his mugshot plastered across headlines and television screens. The man who had terrorized a family, a community, and an entire region was now confined, awaiting his fate. But for the MacIvor family, true justice would always remain elusive. No verdict, no sentence could undo the pain of losing Michael, Missy, and baby Kyle Patrick. Years later, the MacIvor case is remembered not only for its horror, but for the resilience of a family and a community determined to seek justice. Thomas Overton's name may be etched in infamy, but it is the memory of Michael, Missy, and Kyle Patrick that continues to shine, a reminder of lives taken too soon and a promise never to forget. The MacIvor murders weren't just a tragic loss for a family. They became a wake-up call for an entire state. The case exposed gaps in the justice system, especially regarding the recognition of unborn victims of violence. It wasn't until 2004, 13 years after that stormy night, that the Unborn Victims of Violence Act was introduced. This law ensured that lives like baby Kyle Patrick's were finally acknowledged in the eyes of justice. Law enforcement officers who worked tirelessly on the case reflect on its impact. They credit advancements in DNA technology and interagency collaboration as pivotal in bringing Overton to justice. Forensic scientists have since used this case as a cornerstone for developing better protocols in evidence handling and analysis. But for the MacIvor family, these strides in justice came at a price too high to measure. Their lingering pain serves as a reminder that while laws and systems can evolve, the human cost of violence remains immeasurable. Missy's mother once said, "Justice may have been served, but it will never erase the emptiness left in our hearts." This case also left an indelible mark on the Florida Keys community. What was once a quiet paradise became a place shadowed by the memory of that terrible night. Families became more vigilant, and neighbors looked out for one another in ways they hadn't before. The storm didn't just change the landscape, it changed the people who lived through it. Today, the MacIvor family has found ways to honor the memory of Michael, Missy, and baby Kyle Patrick. A small memorial sits beneath the swaying palms of the Florida Keys, a place where friends and family gather to remember the love and laughter that were stolen from them. Candlelight vigils are held every year, the soft glow symbolizing hope, resilience, and the promise to never forget. For those who knew them, Michael, Missy, and Kyle Patrick will always be more than names in a headline. They were a young couple with dreams of a future, a family just beginning their journey. Their story reminds us of the fragility of life and the strength it takes to fight for justice. As the sun rises over the Florida Keys, it brings with it the promise of new beginnings. But the storm winds that once howled through this paradise still echo in the hearts of those who lived through its devastation. For the MacIvor family, and for countless others touched by their story, it is a reminder to cherish what we have and to never stop seeking justice for those we've lost. Thank you for watching this deep and emotional exploration of the MacIvor case. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to uncover stories like these and honor the memory of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Let's keep their legacy alive.